from April's Home, and happy October 1st. I love the fall season and I love October. I get excited every year when October 1st comes around. The weather starts to turn. There are currently leaves falling down, even though we are having a very hot and sunny day today. We've had a couple good days of rain this week, so it's been really, really nice. It's starting to seem a little bit more like autumn today. I've got my delicious cup of tea here to try out. This is the Ahmad Apple Refresh Tea. It smells really good. That is delicious. Just the right amount of apple flavor with the black tea. This might be one of my new favorite fall teas. I will go ahead and link this tea below. I found it at Amazon. We'll get another sip there. Today, I thought it would be fun to share with you a lot of the books I've been reading. I meant to do a lot of reading vlogs this year and reading updates with my Goodread goals this year, but I have had such a busy year so far this year that I haven't had time to film any book vlogs since way back in February. So it's been a really long time since I've updated you, and I've done a lot of reading in the meantime, and I have a lot of reading that I'm hoping to do this autumn, starting here October 1st. So first, I thought I would share with you all of the books that I have read so far this year since February. If you'd like to check out my previous February vlog, I will go ahead and link that in the description box below. I will also go ahead and link my Goodreads page down below too, so if you'd like, you can follow me on Goodreads. I set for myself at the beginning of the year a goal to read 50 books. Last year I also had that same goal but did not achieve it. This year I'm doing a lot better. I'm still a little bit behind, but I think I'll be able to catch up. I do a lot of reading in the fall. In the fall months, I tend to love reading quite a bit more than throughout the year, and I've done pretty good so far. I've read 24 books this year, so quite a few books so far compared to last year. So I'm excited to share with you some of the books that I've been reading so far this year. Before I get started sharing with you all of the books that I've read this year so far and the books that I'd like to read in the upcoming month, I thought that I would share with you how I started out October 1st with some delicious cinnamon rolls from Trader Joe's and fixing my cup of tea. It is the first day of October, so I thought I would make the fun pumpkin rolls that I bought from Trader Joe's recently for breakfast this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and get these in a pan and get ready to have a nice first day of October. These Trader Joe's pumpkin rolls look and smell absolutely delicious. I'm going to go ahead and get the icing on them now. The glaze is on and they look absolutely delicious, perfect for the first day of October. I also thought that I would go ahead and heat up some water for some tea. I've chosen this delicious smelling apple refresh tea by Ahmad Tea. Usually, of course, I use my Irish breakfast Twinings tea, which is my favorite, but I thought this looked like the perfect fall tea to try, and it smells delicious. As soon as I took the wrapping off of this box, I smelled delicious apple, so I'm very eager to try that out. So I'm going to go ahead and heat up some water for some tea, and then we'll have tea and pumpkin rolls. Okay, I'll get my tea water on here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and serve up a cinnamon roll on this really cute little plate here. I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It's got a dog that looks a lot like Percy on it, and I have the matching mug. I'm going to heat up some tea water and have a cinnamon roll. My daughter is stopping by with my grandson, so I'll visit with them for a little while and we'll eat some cinnamon rolls. I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick try to see how they turned out. Okay. I had a nice visit with my daughter and my grandson. It was really nice seeing them stop in for a little while today. The cinnamon rolls are really delicious. My daughter enjoyed one as well. I was more interested in cuddling my grandson than finishing my cinnamon roll, so I'll have to finish that later. Right now, I'm getting my tea going here. Really looking forward to trying this tea out. Yummy tea. I really enjoy that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with what I've read so far. I'm going to go ahead and look at my Goodreads list so I can kind of keep track of the order that I read everything. So I believe I left off in February with having just finished Cannery Row by Steinbeck. That is such a wonderful book. And then I started a new Aunt Dimity mystery book. This one is Aunt Dimity and the Wishing Well. And in the description box below, I will leave a link to all these books with my personalized Amazon link, just so you can find these books if you're interested in reading them as well. Again, this is Aunt Dimity and the Wishing Well. This was a really good Aunt Dimity mystery. It's the second Aunt Dimity mystery that I've read this year that is not a murder mystery, it's just a regular mystery. It was a pretty cute one. I liked this a lot. So I started out with Cozy Mystery there. I always enjoy a good cozy mystery. And like I've been doing throughout the year, I've been kind of staggering back and forth between a children's book and a chapter book, or occasionally it'll be like a young adult book. I love all sorts of literature, and I love children's literature. The next one I read was from the New York Review Children's Collection that I'm trying to work my way through this year. I probably won't finish all of the books this year, but I definitely will make a good dent. This one is called The Sorely Trying Day, and it is illustrated and written by Russell and Lillian Hoban. This was a really cute book. I loved the illustrations. You can see how cute they are there. Full of really nice illustrations and a really cute story about a family who has kind of a difficult day. And it kind of goes through some of their feelings and all the predicaments that they have throughout that day, and then how they kind of come together at the end and work things out. So I really liked that. It was a very adorable story. I think children would really enjoy this. Russell and Lillian Hoban are the writers of one of my most beloved children's series, the Bread and Jam for Francis book and the Francis book series. I love those. I loved those growing up. I still love them to this day. So it was really neat to read a story other than the Francis books written by the Hobans. So that was a really good one to read as well. I really enjoyed that. And I actually also read another children's book after The Sorely Trying Day. I read Home in the Woods. This is a really neat story. It says, deep in the woods we find a shack all wrapped in tar paper. It doesn't look like much of a home to me. This, I believe, this one is by Eliza Wheeler. The illustrations are just phenomenal. Just like you can see on the front cover here, it's just beautiful. This is a story of a family during the Great Depression, and it is a story based on the author's, I believe, her grandmother that she heard growing up. And it's just really a neat and hopeful story. I just really loved this. The writer of this also wrote a book called Miss Maple's Seeds, and I recently read that to my grandson. So I'm really impressed with this writer. I love the illustrations, and the story was just really a sweet and interesting story. I really love hearing stories about the Great Depression. My grandmother also lived through the Great Depression, and I also grew up hearing stories about the Great Depression. So it was really neat to hear this particular story. So Home in the Woods, definitely a wonderful children's picture book. I would highly recommend that one. After Home in the Woods, I decided to read a shorter story by H.G. Wells. This is one that's been on my list to read for a really long time, and this is The Time Machine. The Time Machine was really well written. I loved the descriptions of everything. It definitely was a book that makes you think of the futures that might come to pass. It was also interesting hearing about his invention and just the way people spoke in this time and discussed things like time travel and science and things like that. It was a very intriguing story, very short little story. I had always heard about the time machine, and I've seen little clips about it and about the Morlocks and things like that. So I was very interested to read the actual story, and it was really neat reading the descriptions of the future that H.G. Wells imagined in this story. So that's another book that I would highly recommend, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Then I read a couple more children's stories. This time I was working on some of the fables that I had on my list of things to read. I love fairy tales and fables from different cultures around the world, in particular the Scottish and Irish cultures, because that is part of my heritage. So this one is by Rumer Godden and Marie Hederwick. This is called The Old Woman Who Lived in a Vinegar Bottle, and it is a traditional Scottish tale. It is so fun. This is just a wonderful little tale based sort of on the magical wishing fish type of a fairy tale. This is her view of that tale, the author's, You can see the precious little drawings in here. They look like probably watercolor or light sketching. I think watercolor, probably sketching and watercolor. Just a wonderful story with a great little morality tale. Being happy with what you have, liking the simple life, and not wishing for more than is good for you. So this is also a tale that I would highly recommend, The Old Woman Who Lived in a Vinegar Bottle. I look forward to my grandchildren being a little bit older so I can read this one to them. And then because I was studying a little bit about Celtic folklore and things like that, I have this one book that has been on my list for a while to read. It's called The Magical Story of the Tuwatha de Dinan. I know there's multiple ways that that is pronounced. I'm just going to go with Tuwatha de Dinan. I do know that in Gaelic it probably sounds quite a bit differently than that, or close to that. I'm not going to attempt that today though. But this is the book. This is an Irish tale about an ancient people called the Tuwatha de Dinan. It's their story of when they came to Ireland and the magical treasures that they brought along with them, and just some of the history of these people. Again, this is Celtic folklore and very interesting. I'm very excited to read the rest of this series. On the back of the book you can see many different books in this series. The Children of Lear, the story of St. Patrick, the Salmon of Knowledge. So just a bunch of really cool Celtic folklore. Again, this is something that I've studied for years, fairy tales and folklore, so it's something that I like to always add in. Every year I read more and new different ones that I haven't read yet. So this was a really fun story. It's written for children, so it gives you just like a nutshell view of these people here, sort of like the fairy people. Are often called this Tuatha De Danann. It's often associated with fairy people and things like that in Celtic folklore. So very interesting book. If you're studying folklore, I would definitely suggest this series, or if you're homeschooling children and want to include some folklore, I think these would be really great. They just give a nice, simple explanation with some simple pictures and things like that. So that was also a really good one. And then keeping with more children's literature, this is one that was on my bookshelf. I recently was organizing and dusting my children's picture bookshelf, and so I kept picking up a bunch of fun books that I wanted to read. I do hope to share my bookcases with you. I've just reset a bunch of them. You can see a new one here behind me for some of my overflow books that I had as well, so hopefully we can do that sometime this year. This one is The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley, illustrated by Anne Graham Johnston. So you can see that there. I grew up watching the show The Water Babies. It was a movie when I was a kid, very funky movie. I also did, after reading this book, I went back and I found that, I believe it's just on YouTube, The Water Babies movie. Anyway, it was very fun to watch. Reminded me of watching it from when I was a kid, so that was really fun. I don't believe that this is the full book. I believe I put it on my list. It's been a little while since I've read this, but I believe I put on my list a fuller version of the Water Baby story. So this is like an abridged children's version with really beautiful illustrations. You can see some of those rich illustrations there. The story of the little boy in this tale here, and how he comes to be a water baby and hangs out with the other water babies. Is a very intriguing tale, very interesting. So I am interested in later on in the year acquiring an unabridged copy of this story and reading it a little bit more. It's a very interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you watched the Water Babies movie back in like the late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember if it was an 80s movie or late 70s movie, but very interesting movie. So I read that as also a book I would recommend. I think it's really intriguing. And then I thought I would read a children's chapter book. This is a series that I've been interested in reading, Sarah, Plain and Tall. So I read the first book in that one. This is written by Patricia McLaughlin, or McLaughlin, I'm not sure how you pronounce that 100%. Very cute little story. perfect chapter book for an early reader. I just loved it. It was sort of the not really a mail order bride, but about as close as you can get to a mail order bride. Back in the pioneer times, this man has lost his wife in childbirth, and he wants another wife. So he writes to this woman here, Sarah, and she comes from the East Coast to the Plains, and they form a relationship and they end up getting married. It's a very, very sweet little story from the children's viewpoint. So I like that. Because I like Little House on the Prairie and books like that, I thought this would be a good book to read as well. So Sarah Plain and Tall, very cute, really nice little chapter book there. Good for early readers, I think, as well as anyone who likes the Little House on the Prairie series. And then next I decided to listen to a book on Audible. My husband uses Audible because he drives a lot for his work. He had a bunch of built-up credits, and I thought I would give listening to books a try. So I picked up a book called The Perfect Guests. You can see a picture of what it looks like there. Again, I listened to this on Audible. The Perfect Guests by Emma Roos. It was an interesting sort of a thrillery type of a novel. I only rated it 3 stars. I just didn't love the story development as much as I thought. I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities in the book to make it a little bit more thrilling. But even though I only rated it 3 stars, I did think it was an intriguing book to listen to. I don't think I love listening to books as much as I do just picking up my hard copy, my paper copy of a book here and reading through it. I love flipping the pages. And when I was listening to the book, it was hard not having an actual paper copy of a book in my hand. I couldn't really do other things because I was really trying to concentrate on the story, but it was a fun experience to listen to a book on Audible. I definitely think Audible is great for nonfiction books if you're just trying to hear, through knowledge, but when you really want to get into a story, my preferred method is still a copy of the book. But that was fun, and it was interesting reading The Perfect Guest. It was a fun story. But it wasn't my favorite. So that was only a 3-star rating. Most of my books here are like a 4 or 5 star. That one was a 3-star. Next, I read a middle grade chapter book. This one is called Echo Mountain, and I loved this book. This is by Lauren Wolk, and again, this is also took place in the Depression era. It's about a family who believe the mother was... I believe the mother was a teacher and the father was a tailor or something like that during the Depression, and they lost their jobs and had to move to the mountains. So it's the story of a girl and her brother. The father in this book gets very injured, and so it's about the healing of people and the coming together of people. So it is about the daughter who is working to heal her father and help her mother and her other sister and brother. It is just a wonderful book. I would highly encourage anyone to read this book. I know it is a middle grade book. It's a pretty thick chapter book here, but it would be great for confident young readers, and it is just an amazing book. I really loved it. I found myself not wanting to put it down and really wanting to hear how the story ended. I'm also interested later on in the year or next year to read the other 2 books that she's written called Wolf Hollow and Beyond the Bright Sea. I have those right back here on my bookshelf, waiting to read those next. Again, wonderful book, Echo Mountain. I just love this. It was so interesting to read another book set in the Great Depression, and just a wonderfully well-written book. Lots of feelings in this book, and very cool descriptions of the mountains that they lived in, and all coming from the viewpoint of a young girl. So really great book. Highly recommended this book. And then next I read another adult, this is a mystery thriller type book. This is from Lucy Foley called The Guest List. And it's very much sort of in the vein of an Agatha Christie type mystery. They're all on an island for a wedding. Someone gets murdered. And then, of course, there's the mystery of who did that. The book kind of jumps timelines an awful lot, and also is told from the perspective of, I think, 5 or 6 people. So each chapter will be a different person's perspective of what was happening, both before the murder and the wedding, and then after when it happens. So that was a little bit tricky to keep track of at first, all the jumping around back and forth. I didn't love that, but it also didn't bother me that much. I was able to keep things straight in it, and because each chapter really starts out telling you who it is that you're hearing the perspective of, it is pretty easy to keep track of that. So the descriptions of the Scottish island and the Scottish moors on the island were really neat. It was, of course, a dark and stormy situation happening, so I loved that setting as well. I did not like how the book wrapped up. I felt there were far too many unbelievable connections that were all kind of centered around this one person. I did not love that, but overall that didn't make me dislike the book. I still think it was a really fun read. I will say it was one of those books that I couldn't put down. So, I mean, I can't rate it too poorly considering that it was one of those books that I just kept wanting to read and to find out what happened, and I enjoyed the different descriptions and the storyline and the mystery of it all. So I think that this is a pretty fun book. So I did rate this a 4-star read. I thought it was pretty good. I would definitely read another one by Lucy Foley. I have another one of her books called The Hunting Party, also written by her. So I will be reading that probably later on in the year, perhaps in the winter time, or after my October book list, which you'll see in a minute is a very extensive list of books that I'd like to read. But The Guest List by Lucy Foley, I would definitely recommend that book. I think it was a really fun mystery read. Next, I read a couple more children's books, again, as I was working on organizing and cleaning out my children's picture books. This one was Children of the Forest. Such a cute book. I loved the illustrations. They were just wonderful. All told from the perspective of the children and their imaginations and what they're doing. And it has a really cute little ending as well. This would be a really fun one to read again with my grandchildren, just a little bit older. I'll definitely read them this story. And again, the pictures in this are wonderful. So Children of the Forest by Matt Myers. That was a really good one. And then I also read The Antler Ship. I've had this book for a while now. It's just beautiful. The cover has a really nice texture to it. And you can see the beautiful ship with the antlers there. It's a book that is written with animals as the main characters. We have a fox, I believe, as the main character. You can see this. He desires to find different things out, so he goes sailing on this ship. So the illustrations in this book were absolutely wonderful, but the story was not as put together as I would like to have for a children's book. I feel like there was a lot missing, and I thought that the ending was a little bit weak as well. However, because the illustrations are so pretty, I still think that this will be a fun one to read with my grandchildren, just because we can discuss everything that we see in the beautiful illustrations. It would have been nice if they would have worked on the story a little bit longer. I feel like it was just a rushed storyline that they needed to work on just a little bit longer, but it is a beautiful book. So that is called The Antler Ship. Again, I would love to hear in the comments if you've read any of these books and you have an opinion on them. I would love to hear what you think of that. This one is written by Dashka Slater and the Fan Brothers. So one of those is probably the illustrator and one is probably the writer. Yeah, so it's written by Dashka Slater and illustrated by the Fan Brothers. Well, the Fan Brothers did a tremendous job illustrating this book. It was just beautiful. Then I read the next up book in the Sarah Plain and Tall series. This one is called Skylark. This is also a really good story. This one kind of picks up where Sarah Plain and Tall leaves off. And they're having quite a drought in the plains. The crops are going bad. There's fires, wildfires as a result of the drought. And so they go to visit Sarah's family on the East Coast. So we get to see where Sarah came from, and we get to read about the East Coast and some of the things that they see there. And then you know, how the family kind of copes with everything and what happens from there. This is, again, a very good series. I have the rest of the series here. I will probably finish it. You can read these in a very short amount of time, so it's just a nice little break in the day to pick up one of these little small books. Again, for fans of Little House on the Prairie and books like that, I think that this would be great, and for young readers, again, a really good really good book series. So Skylark, also by Patricia McLaughlin, and I have in my list here the other books in this series as well. I've also been working my way through this fun book here. This is a book that I got my daughter for her birthday. I got us both one, Murder Most Puzzling. So there are 20 different mysterious cases to solve. Gives you like a picture clue to look at and some other clues in the story. Kind of gives you the little setup of the story here and then some pictures to look for clues. And this was really fun. Me and my daughter have done, I believe, the first 2 or 3 mysteries in this book. So we did these together. She was at her house, I was at mine. We were discussing it over the phone, kind of looking at the pictures in our book and trying to solve the puzzle. So it was really neat. I love the illustrations in this, and I'm looking forward to solving the rest of the murder mysteries. They're pretty fun. They're not too difficult. I was a little bit worried that they'd be just too difficult. I don't like puzzles that are so difficult that I have no hope of solving them. And these were pretty good. Although I did have my daughter's help, and she's really quite the puzzler and good at her logic thinking skills. So she really helped out a lot with that. But it was super fun, and I would definitely recommend this for anyone who likes a good mystery, kind of allow you to be the investigator there. So Murder Most Puzzling, very fun book. And again, I'll leave the books linked down below. And then I read a classic, but before I tell you about that, I'll tell you the last little children's book that I read. This is called The Wolf Story by William Mccleary, illustrated by Warren Chappell. And this is also part of the New York Review Children's Collection. You can see this book here, The Wolf Story. This was really a cute little story. It is a story about a father telling a story to his son, and at some points in the story he's telling the story also to his son's friend as they go about their day, sometimes at various parks, and I believe they live in New York or around New York. And it's just a father telling a cute wolf story. The boy wants stories about a big scary wolf, and his chicken in the story is very, very cute. Cute written story there. There were only a few little ink illustrations, but they were really nice, and it was just a nice, pleasant story to read. Definitely a more old-fashioned type of a story. I don't know how children would like this story today. I think they might like it, but I'm not 100% sure. This is one of those stories that I think you'd want to read first and see if it fits your child. There was some talk of violence towards the wolf and some violence regarding that some children or people might be more sensitive to nowadays. So I would definitely give a book like this a read before you read it to your family, just so you know if it fits your child's needs or not. But for me as an adult who enjoys children's literature, this was a really intriguing book to read. I really enjoyed this. This was first published in 1947, so it's not too old of a book, but it definitely is a little bit more of a vintage children's literature book. And if you're interested in children's literature, I would definitely think that this would be a fun one to read, The Wolf Story. Again, that's part of the New York Review's children's collection there. I love these books. They're so interesting. Every single one that they've picked for this collection I've really enjoyed and I think are really neat. Okay, so now to share with you one of my most favorite books that I've read so far this year. Let me get a sip of tea here. I'm going to have to heat that back up here in a bit. So this is a book from an author that I'm really interested in reading a bunch of his books this year or within the next couple of years. Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury is an incredible writer, and I'm just really enjoying this book here. I finished this book just the other day. It is Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. Dandelion Wine, oh, such an amazing story. This was a book that I heard suggested to read during the summer. I can't remember what booktuber suggested this, but it was a suggestion and I went ahead and picked it up. I hadn't really ever heard much about Dandelion Wine. I'd heard a couple people mention that it was a nice story to read for the summer, but I think this story is absolutely amazing, and I just was so impressed. I never tab books this much with notes. Occasionally I'll put a couple little tabs in here and there for quotes that I love, but this book, you can kind of see here, is just filled with little notation tabs here. Such wonderful, rich literature. I just can't say enough how much I loved this book. Definitely about summer. This is about summer in 1928 from a boy's perspective, not a little boy, a boy, like a grade school aged boy. what he sees and what he records in his small town about the summer. And the descriptions of it are just so rich. It just speaks to life and what he is seeing and recording about life and what he's all learning about life. It's just amazing. So many times in here, I just stopped and just had to reread the wonderful thoughts that were written in here by Ray Bradbury. Just amazing. I believe this might have been inspired. I believe this book is inspired by his own boyhood. And it's just wonderful. Here's one of the quotes that I enjoyed. No matter how hard you try to be what you once were, you can only be what you are here and now. I really loved that. A lot of times, I'm a very nostalgic person, so I will remember the past and probably remember the good parts of the past a little bit too much. And it's really important to focus in the here and now. I really loved his description of that. It goes on to talk, of course, a bit more about that. It says, be what you are, bury what you are not. Again, just like words of wisdom here in this boy's observing of the world around him and what he hears from the older people in his town that he spends time with or hears from, and stories we hear about them. Here's one that I thought was a pretty funny quote. The beginning of wisdom, as they say, when you're 17, you know everything. When you're 27, if you still know everything, you're still 17. I thought that was pretty hilarious. There's some interesting information here about how you can't depend on things. And then in the end of the story here, they're describing the grandmother's kitchen. This was such a wonderful description. As a grandmother myself, who spends a lot of time in the kitchen making meals for my family, I really loved reading the description of this grandma's. Definitely was wonderful. In the story, the grandma cooks amazing food that her and her family and her boarders all really love. And then an aunt comes along for a visit, and she helps the grandma get organized because apparently her kitchen is disheveled and there's things everywhere and ingredients everywhere. So the aunt helps her label everything and organize everything, and then notices that the grandma's glasses are old and takes her for a new prescription and buys her a cookbook. And then the grandma starts cooking again with her new glasses and the recipe book and everything organized, and nothing turns out very well. And she laments that she has lost her touch in the kitchen, and she's very sad. And anyway, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it does resolve itself, and we find out why it resolves itself. And it's just a wonderful, again, wonderful description of just the people, real people that this book describes. So as you can tell, I really love this book. I will definitely read this book again. I put so many tabs in this little paperback copy, I decided to order a hardcover copy of it as well, just so it would preserve a little bit longer. Sometimes these little trade paperbacks, they don't last very long. And so I thought I would go ahead and grab the hardcover of this too, because this, I believe, is one of my new favorite books. So Ray Bradbury, Dandelion Wine, highly, highly recommend it. I do think because it does take place in summer, it's a wonderful story to read throughout the summer. And then as it ends and becomes fall, I thought it was perfect timing that I finished this right at the beginning of fall and the end of summer. Absolutely perfect. I hope to read this again, maybe next summer. I don't know, but it is wonderful, and I'm really eager. You'll see in a second here the books that I've got to read here for the month of October. I have more Ray Bradbury books in that list, and I hope to read a lot more from this author in the future. So, Dandelion Wine, highly, highly recommended. I thought I would share some of the books that I'll be reading in October. The first book that I'd like to mention is illustrated by Randy Lynn Reed. I mentioned her in my fall decor, home decor video. I have her print over here from her shop online. This is from her Patreon, and I also ordered some things from her shop. One of them is a book that she has illustrated called A Season's Treasure. Really precious illustrations from Randy Lynn Reed. Again, she's a YouTuber here. I will go ahead and link her channel below. I've really been enjoying watching her fall content. It's very, very inspirational. So I picked up her book here. I'm excited to read this. I'm excited to share some of these adorable woodlandy animal illustrations with my grandchildren as well. And I also in the package ordered some really cute note cards, and she sent along a little thank you card. Very cute little squirrel there. Thought that was cute. A little print of a mouse there. And then the card set that I bought are the different seasons of this little squirrel's home. So we have winter, spring, summer, and fall, all the different seasons here. And I thought that I would set these out in my grandchildren's playroom. I do a little seasonal display in there for them. One of these days I'll have to give you a tour of that room. It's a really cute little room that I've put together for the grandkids. So here, I believe this one is summer. Actually, that one might have been spring, and this one is probably summer. So very cute. And then we have fall. This is the one I'm eager to display right now. So we've got fall there. And then we have winter here. So I'll use these cards as displays in the playroom, and then because it's a note set, I'll also have some extra for writing little notes. So that was really exciting. Also just placed another order for some alphabet cards that she has illustrated for my grandchildren's Christmas presents. So there's that book that I'm interested in reading. She also gives a lot of book recommendations on her channel as well. So lots of good book recommendations and fall inspirational lifestyle videos. And she's an artist, so you get to see her art as well. So I highly recommend that channel. It's very pleasant to watch. So one of the first books that I'm reading this fall is a book that she actually recommended on her vlog. I've also seen a couple other booktubers recommend this, and it looked like it was right up my alley. So I definitely had to pick up this series of books, and I'm really loving it so far. I'm about a quarter of the way through. This is a murder mystery called Shady Hollow by Juno Black. And the cool thing about this murder mystery that I thought was perfect for the beginning of autumn is that the characters here are all woodland creatures. So it takes place in the forest in a little woodland creatures town with all sorts of different animals making up the characters. And of course we start the book with a murder that they have to solve. So adorably written book here, really loving it. Very fun book. So when I'm done with this book, there are also two others, Mirror Lake and Cold Clay. Can't remember which one goes which. I'll have to look that up, which one is next in order. But also similar, you know, murder mystery, or a mystery, I should say. I don't know if these ones are murder mysteries, but mysteries in Shady Hollow. So really cute. I love anything to do with forest animals. So I'm excited to finish this book as well as read the others. This one, again, is going great. I'm really enjoying that. And you'll be able, if you follow me on Goodreads, you'll be able to see what book I've read, what books I've read, what books I'm currently reading, things like that. So this is a wonderful old little book that I've had for quite some time. I love these little cloth bound gold leafed edged books. I think they're so cute. Anyway, this one is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So I wanted to read at least one classic monster book this year. I think I'll go with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, as I've not read it yet. And I want to read this, and then I want to watch the old black and white monster movies. Certainly Frankenstein, maybe Bride of Frankenstein, things like that. I do love the old vintage black and white monster movies. So I thought I would read this and then watch the movie. So Frankenstein is on my list. So then the next book that I have is Fangs here by Sarah Anderson. I can't remember why I picked up this book. I think it just looked intriguing and I'd heard someone say it was good. And then I noticed that it is a graphic novel, which I don't really read very many graphic novels. I've read a few over the years. But this looks like a book that I'll be able to read really quickly. I don't know if it's any good or what it's about. It says it's a love story between a vampire and a werewolf. So we'll see if this is any good. I'll be curious what I think about a graphic novel. So I'll give that a try. With it being about vampires and werewolves, it certainly fits the October theme, spooky books. And then the next book is a classic Halloween favorite. This is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. I have a few books by Washington Irving that I want to read during the holiday season. Some specific books written for Christmas time that Washington Irving wrote that I'm intrigued about reading. And I have never read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So again, this is a book that I'd like to read and then maybe watch the movie. I love watching spooky movies in the month of October. Not too spooky, mostly classics and things like that, like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So I'm really excited to read the book about that. I've been loving the classic writers' books, and this is one that I'm really looking forward to reading, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Then I've got a couple poetry books in here. I haven't read much poetry over the last few years, but it's something that I've been meaning to get back into. This is from the Everyman's Library Pocket books. Pocket Poets, it's called. It's a series of books. I have a few of them, and this one is covered in jack-o'-lanterns, and it says Poems Bewitched and Haunted. So I'm having a feeling that it's full of classic poetry, specifically for the October Halloween season. So I'll be reading a few of these. I don't know that I'll finish the whole book, but I definitely want to read a few poems from this. And then because I read Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine, I thought it would be a good idea to read Ray Bradbury's October Country. This is a collection of short stories. Sounds like these are a little bit more spooky short stories. So again, this might be very nice for October. I do know that Ray Bradbury can write some pretty spooky books, so we'll have to see what I think of the October Country. So this is one that I'm also reading, the October Country, and I've got a few more Ray Bradbury books on the list. The next one is The Halloween Tree. I've always heard about this. I know a lot of people read this in the month of October, and because I was so impressed by his writing in Dandelion Wine, I definitely have been interested in reading a lot of his other literature. I've got a whole stack of Ray Bradbury books to read. So The Halloween Tree is something that I would definitely love to read this month. And I don't know if I'll have time for another one because I do have a lot of books that I'd like to read, but if I get to it, I would also like to read his book, Something Wicked This Way Comes. I grew up watching the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes. We would watch it every October. It is very spooky. I watched it again last year, and I did enjoy it. But again, it's a pretty spooky story, so I am looking forward to reading the book. And it takes place in the same town, Greentown, Illinois, as Dandelion Wine, so it's kind of like a continuation of this book here, of Dandelion Wine. So Something Wicked This Way Comes, definitely also on my list. And then another one that I've heard recommended so many times to read as a good October book, and that is by Neil Gaiman, The Graveyard Book. I have never read this. It has a Newbery Medal, and it looks like it's got some illustrations in here. It's about a boy, I believe, who lives in a graveyard. So very interested to read this one as well. I've heard really good things about The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, so I think that would be a perfect one to read this October. Let's see, I would also like to finish up, I don't know if I'll finish them in October, but October, November perhaps, I would like to finish the Sarah Plain and Tall series. I've got 3 more Caleb's Story, More Perfect Than the Moon, and Grandfather's Dance to read. I've also got some other books by Patricia McLaughlin that I'd like to read, but I definitely would like to finish the Sarah Plain and Tall series. Another book that I have here for poetry in autumn is A Poem for Every Autumn Day. This looks like such a beautiful book. Already read a couple of the poems in here, and the neat thing about them is they are labeled. So it starts with September 1st, so there's a poem for every day in September all the way through November. So you can just pick the day that you're on and open it up and read the book. That's probably how I will approach this poetry book. I probably won't read the whole thing, but I'll definitely be reading some of the poems from A Poem for Every Autumn Day. So more poetry to read. And then this one, I'm not 100% sure again that I'll be able to get to this because this is a pretty heavy reading list here. But again, I've been reading a lot. I read a lot in October and November. As the weather starts to cool down, reading is something I definitely enjoy. Okay, and now the last book here that I think I'll try to read. I don't know, again, this might be a November book. This is called Hare House by Sally Hinclift. It says, was it a place of refuge or danger? You could say I had dreamt of this place, a house alone among the hills, the forest behind it stretching to the horizon, a place of peace where I might find refuge. It is really interesting. It takes place in autumn in Scotland. Can't remember where I heard this book recommended, but I am excited to read it. I love books that take place in Scotland. This sounds really, really intriguing. So I will have to let you know in an update what I think of all of these books that I'm reading here. So Hare House by Sally Hinclift. That's a book I'll hopefully be reading again in October or November with that one. And then I also picked up this fun autumn book from Susan Branch. It says From the Heart of the Home. It's a really cute book here about autumn and a bunch of fun recipes and things to do in autumn. You can see the fun illustrations. Here's the page for corn pudding and Indiana ham and sweet potato soup. I was actually just thinking of making a soup with sweet potatoes. I currently have a big basket of sweet potatoes and I have been making a lot of soup lately. You'll see in a little bit the soup that I made last night. So there's the page for that. You can see how cute. Just lots of fun recipes and ideas for place cards and table settings. So really fun book. I think I saw this recommended on the channel Darling Desi. She also has a lot of really fun seasonal content and lifestyle content to watch too. Very, very fun. So those are my books, all the books that I've read so far this year since February, as well as all the books that I hope to read. I have let's see. So I have 26 more books to hit my Goodreads goal for the end of the year. I hope I can do it. I have a lot of wonderful books in my list to read this October, so I'll see how much reading I can get done. And I will keep you posted. I do hope to do more book vlogs and let you know what I think of all of these books, as well as what I'll be reading next month for November. So hopefully I have the time to keep you posted, and hopefully it won't be such a long video next time. So now I'll go ahead and share with you what we're having for dinner tonight on October 1st. I'm going to heat up some of my lentil soup that I'll show you in this upcoming clip, as well as serve that with a delicious Reuben sandwich, a perfect meal for the first day of October. We'll probably eat that while we watch a fun Halloween movie. The fall weather has returned here with some nice rainy weather the last couple of days, so I thought that it would be really nice to make up a big pot of soup. Originally I was going to use my leftover turkey for a turkey tetrazzini casserole type meal, but we decided we would rather have a nice big pot of soup bubbling away. I have made lentil soup before and filmed the video, so I will go ahead and leave a link for that in the description box below. This one will be a little bit different. I'm adding mushrooms and some tomato paste to this one, and instead of ground turkey, I'm using cubed roasted turkey. Sometimes it's also good with ground sausage, whatever you like. But this is basically the ingredients minus the herbs. I'm also going to add salt and pepper and garlic powder and Italian seasonings, just like I always do. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all chopped up and get my pot of soup bubbling away. I've got everything in the soup pot and it is cooking away. This will be really nice for dinner. It already smells delicious. And here's our dinner for the 1st of October, a delicious lentil soup and a Reuben sandwich on dark rye bread. Nice and toasted up and hot and ready to go. So now I'm going to enjoy a nice dinner with my husband and we'll watch a fun Halloween show. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I spent my October day, hearing about the books that I've read so far, as well as the books that I'd like to read for the rest of October. I really hope you enjoyed this reading and cooking vlog for October 1st. I hope you have a wonderful start to your October as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.